Hey guys. So recently I was kind of reflecting upon my past and just how far everything has come. And I suddenly realized how long I have been a practicing witch and how long I've walked this path basically. So I think what I want to do tonight is go through some of the things that I used to read and some of my first tools as a witch and some of the experiences that I had with you guys because I thought it just might be kind of fun. So I'm 34 and I started down this path at 15. So it's been almost 20 years. And I to me it does go back further than 19 years just because I have so many memories as a child that make me realize that I've always been a witch and I've always been a pagan. But I didn't discover paganism or Wicca in the beginning until I was 15. And what really first started it all is I, funny enough, I was over at my really good friend Sam's house one night and we watched The Craft. We were like 14, I think. And it's kind of sad to say this now because just this last fall I lost my friend Sam. She passed away. So it's really strange to kind of talk about this now. But we were watching The Craft and I think this was 2000, year 2000. Um, and I thought, I wonder if that's actually a belief structure. Because I've always been really interested in mysteries and mythology and the paranormal and everything else. And so I was like, I really wonder if that's a thing. And if it is, obviously I was aware that it was not, you know, anything like the movie, but so I decided to scour my local library and my curiosity kind of got sidetracked as soon as I found Sylvia Browne's books. And the thing is that I have mediumship abilities and I have since I was a child. And I'm really want to do more on that, coming later, talk a little bit more about that. But I really absorbed myself in Sylvia Browne's books at first. And then it just kind of led me on to going further down the shelves in my local library and finding books on Wicca. And the first book that I ever picked up on Wicca, I actually still own, and that is this book right here. This obviously is not the original copy that I read because it was a library book, but I did end up finding this book in a half price books after I moved to Minnesota, and I was like, I'm gonna buy that, and I'm gonna keep it just because this is the first book that opened my eyes to the possibility of Wicca and paganism. And obviously, as my path evolved, I realized that Wicca specifically was not exactly where I wanted to be. But either way, like for most of us, since it had such a larger awareness, I guess, than just paganism in general, just because Wicca, was founded in the 1940s and it just kind of grew and grew. And that wasn't terribly long ago compared to, 1940s to 2000s when you think about how fast a religion can grow and stuff. In the grand scheme of things, in my opinion, it just wasn't that long. So the amount of books, the amount of material on Wicca was just more prevalent. And I realized that a lot of us, especially us who are in our late 20s, early 30s, or, or, or actually even so forth on beyond, have usually found Wicca first because that was the information that was available. And I'm not saying that that's always the case, but I noticed that that seems to be a thing. But for me, it definitely was the case. And I still enjoy this book. This book still has a lot of good information in it, and I will never get rid of it just because it's the first one I read. And then there were a few other books that my teenage little self really latched onto. Unfortunately, one of them I don't have a copy of anymore, but I really enjoyed Confessions of a Teenage Witch by Guinevere Rain. And I really love that book. I did read Silver Ravenwolf's books, and I do remember at the time mostly liking them in my teens, but there was some stuff that I was like, she smells off. But I was like, whatever, it's cool. Like, I'm not judging. Um, and I kind of just, but the other books that I do still have in my collection that I've kept that I do remember having a rather prevalent impact on my teenage witch self were The Circle Within. And this is by, yeah, Diane Sylvan. This book is fantastic still, even now. I love this book. Um, and it is based on the Wiccan tradition. But again, I mean, you can take a lot from this even if you don't follow the Wiccan. So that's one of the reasons why I kept it, is just because I always really enjoyed it. The other book that I really enjoyed, and this one, oh, I've had for so long, is Moon Spells. I did my first spell from this book, guys. I I think it was to awaken your psychic abilities. I don't remember. Because trying to understand my abilities is what initially led me on this path, basically. Aside from seeing the craft and becoming inspired in more of an outward sense, I guess is the best way to describe it. But yeah, I love this book. And I know she actually just came out with a few other books, or she is coming out with a few. I know one of them is like an interactive journal on working with the moon and stuff. This is by Diane Alquist, yeah. Um, and I love this book so much. Oh, the nostalgia, guys. So the other thing I kind of wanted to talk about was what was it like practicing as a practicing witch in your teens in the early 2000s, at least in my case, from my experiences. Well, for one, I was really grateful because my mother was super open and she didn't care. And she just was like, as long as you don't burn down the house, I don't care. But my favorite thing about my mother was every single time we would go to leave the house, she'd go, "You turned off your incense, right?" And I'm like, "Mom, it doesn't have a switch." And she's just like, "Well, I just wanted to make sure." I'm like, I put it out? Is that what you're asking? She's like, "Yeah." But every single time she'd say, "You turned off your incense, right?" And like my mother, she didn't care, and she was just so supportive of that. And I was grateful because I didn't have to hide myself from her. I had my altar out on my dresser, and she didn't care. She just didn't care. So I had good experiences with that. I was able to explore my path spiritually, and often my mother would pick up my books and read them because she was curious. So I was supported in that way, and that doesn't happen to every teen who is going through something like this, be it finding their spiritual path or finding out another part about themselves that is somewhat unconventional, I guess we could say, or what have you, or still difficult to accept in our society. And that's just something that I will be grateful for, is that I had her support on this and I could explore it and she didn't care. My parents didn't raise me under any religion. They basically were like, religion's a personal choice. You can choose for what you want to do and the path that you want to walk because that's for you and it's not for everybody else. And yeah. So I had that going for me. The other thing that was interesting about being a teen witch in the early 2000s was metaphysical shops were kind of all over the place, I noticed. And there was one in particular that I first started going to. It was in my local mall, which I'm from Washington State. So I used to go to just to my wedding ring on the desk. Um, I used to go to the Alderwood Mall in Linwood, Washington, and at that point in time, they had a shop called the Magical Garden. I actually still have a velvet bag that I bought crystals in that says the Magical Garden. It's extremely faded now, but you can still tell that it says it, and it's just so funny. Um, I remember going there and I was looking at the books and I just remember smelling like Nang Chapa. And there was a woman who used to work there who was just gorgeous. She had dark hair, dark curly hair, and just these beautiful bright eyes. And she had a pentacle tattoo, like right in the center of her chest on her sternum. And I just remember being like, oh my God, she is so cool, being what, 15. And it was like, I hope to be like that someday. Well, here we are. Um, and I just remember always wanting to go there, always begging my parents for money so I could go buy witchy books or check them out at the library after school, or just slowly start to build my collection of the things that I wanted to have as I explored this. But the things that I tend to utilize a lot was I utilized um I remember burning vanilla incense quite a bit. I remember making things in my pottery class in my 3D art class for at high school, to like incense burners and things like that. My other friends in that class would often make me stuff too. It was just funny. Um, I had made this tile thing that I burnt incense on, and I actually had written like the name of a Japanese rock star that I was obsessed with in high school. Everyone was obsessed with the rock star in high school. And I also, for my first one of my first spells, aside from one of the ones that I did in here, this was one of the first spells that I picked from the book to do. But one of my very first spells I ever did is I was angry. I don't even really remember about what. I think it was because I was going through some issues with friends. Um, I had a lot of struggles with my peers in high school, but who didn't? And I remember writing down my feelings and just needing to get them out of me because they were eating me alive, it felt like. And I took a big metal coffee tin and I went outside on my patio and I lit it on fire and I threw it in the coffee tin. So I used a coffee tin for a cauldron and it worked. I felt immediately better. And that is something I still do now. If I'm like, I can't get this yuckiness off of me right now. I need to just write it all down and burn it and be done with it. I actually have a video I posted last fall called Light It Up, Babe, and that's basically what I'm talking about. But that was one of my first spells I did. And then let's see. So some of the tools I utilized were, I remember burning a lot of vanilla incense, as I said. I remember making things in school. I remember being gifted a lot of candles and stuff. Matches always went missing in our house, and I was usually the culprit. At least I was using them only to burn incense and candles. Um, let's see. I remember my very first SMA. Actually had to have my older brother order off eBay because I was not old enough to purchase it. And here it is. I still keep it in the exact same cloth I've always kept it in. And first of all, I'll show you guys the cloth. This is from a Japanese exchange student that we had, which I love, love, love this cloth. I've had it for so long. Always kept this athame wrapped in it. I don't know why, but that's just what felt right to me. But yeah, this is my first athame. It has a mermaid on it and a ship, and that's it. This is the only athame I've ever had. It's honestly kind of cheaply made, but I don't even care because I've had it since I was like 15 years old and I love it. And I had to have my big brother buy it for me. It's just kind of funny. So that's one of my other oldest tools that I've always had. The last tool that I have in front of me that was definitely from those years was my first pinnacle. I bought this at Hot Topic, and it has these blue jewels, and one of them is missing, and the zodiac on it. And I just really liked it, but I could only wear it so often because I'm allergic to sheet metal. So, but there are definitely pictures of me wearing this, and yeah, it just my path has changed a lot since me being that teenager. Here almost 20 years later, though, I'm still practicing and my path has evolved, yes, but ultimately I'm still a witch. And I'm still a witch who enjoys burning vanilla incense and working with the same antheme. And I still have some of the same books. I still refer to the same books. And yeah, I don't know, I was thinking a lot about what would I tell my teenage self, my teenage witch self? Um, I have one other memory that just popped in my head that I want to quickly share before I go into, well, what I tell myself. But this video is kind of a wing it video, guys. I remember on my 16th birthday, I had been reading about hereditary witchcraft because the books back then spoke a little bit more about that than they do now because you don't have to be a hereditary witch, although there are hereditary witches. You don't have to be one to practice. And I remember my grandmother and my aunt picked me up to take me out to dinner for my 16th birthday. And I nervously asked if we had anyone that had practiced witchcraft in the family. And they both started laughing. And I remember being humiliated because I just wanted them to answer the question. And I thought, why are you laughing at this? And I was so angry that I got out of the car. I remember. And I remember my aunt being like, well, you better not be working with tarot cards and blah, 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 blah. And eh, it was such a horrible experience. And it's crazy because, like, one of those relatives, my grandmother, I love and adore, and she's very open-minded and she's very sweet. But my aunt, not so much. So, I just remember having a really terrible experience with that. Um, but I, what would I tell my teenage witch self now, having it be 20 years later? That's just something I've been thinking about over the last few days, and it's something that kind of prompted this video. And um, I think honestly, it would be this is something to you. This is something that is going to be a very large part of you, and it's going to be something that you're going to be extremely passionate about, and it's going to affect almost every single aspect of your life. So relish and love yourself for it. I hear kitty mischief, sorry. And love yourself because don't underestimate your power. And that's something that being a witch and a practicing pagan has given me over the years is my own personal power. It's one of the things that drew me to it as soon as I started to learn more about it. I was like, wait, I can be in the driver's seat of this. I'm the person that has the power behind this. Yeah, that sounds great to me. That sounds like something I can really understand and connect with. So yeah, I'm kind of curious if anyone else has been a practicing witch and pagan as long as I have since the early 2000s or since your teen years, however old you are. And if time has passed, what was it like then for you to be a teenage witch? And how how has it changed for you? And what would you tell your teenage self? I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. I hope it was kind of fun. I just have been really reflecting on, like I said, how long I've been a witch and how deeply rooted it has now become And I just really kind of wanted to bring you guys along for a ramble in the journey of this. But yeah, as always, thank you for watching and listening.